One of the concerns in Hollywood these days is artificial intelligence, AI, and AI is at the heart of what your software does. How worried should we be about AI in your software given all of the discussion that's going on in the industry?
In the case of our software, each customer, each user of the software controls their own data, and there's no kind of blurring of boundaries where their data might end up somewhere else. In fact, in the on-premise scenario, many of our Hollywood customers are keeping it what's called air-gapped on their premises. So we have a very big promo house that does all the tentpole movies. They're working with content that won't be seen in the public for 6 months or a year further, but they're very comfortable with using AI because it's on-premise AI that they can control and cost manage. So it goes no further than them, and it becomes their asset instead of their potential competition.
One of the things that's exciting about this show is that we're sponsored by AxleAI, and I want to thank Sam Bogoch, who's the CEO of AxleAI, for sponsoring us here at NAB. Sam, thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
How would you describe Axle?
We do software that helps people search and manage the large amounts of video that they've already shot and edited and make it repurposable for social content.
What have you got that's new?
Well, the big thing that we've been rolling out this year is scene understanding. Prior to this, we already did things like face recognition, object recognition, transcription, and logo recognition. But those were looking at individual elements of a video. We now have scene understanding, so it will summarize what is going on in the video and give you a high-level searchable description of that video.
Does this run as a standalone application or network attached, or how do we access it?
Well, it's software, so in principle it can run anywhere, but most of our customers choose to run it on-premise on their own systems because they have more control over it, and the costs are much more manageable than if you try and run them in the cloud. A portion of our customers do run them in the cloud, and that portion is growing, but I would say today 90+% of our customer base is focused on the on-premise application.
One of the things that you began the company with, because I've been following you for the last 10 years, is this whole concept of integrating AI in searching for material. How is that implemented in your product?
The big thing is that we give a graphical view of all your assets, and we make low-res previews that you can scrub through and browse and play. It's those previews that are subjected to the AI search, if you will. And so when you do a search, it's basically bringing it up in a browser interface right alongside the media. So if it finds a particular phrase that's spoken, it'll bring up that portion of the video. If it finds a person or something happening in a scene, it's all going to happen in conjunction with the player in your browser. And now with a player in your Premiere panel. We have a panel for Adobe Premiere that does the same thing.
Well, let's say that I find all the shots that I want of a particular scene. How do I get it out of Axle into whatever I'm using to edit with? And do you only support Premiere?
The Premiere panel is the easiest way to bring it into Premiere, but we also support Premiere XML, just if you had to just transfer it to someone. And then we have a drag and drop application for applications like Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and Avid. So essentially, no matter what editor you're using, we have a way for you to seamlessly search for what you want, subclip it, and bring that into your timeline.
One of the concerns in Hollywood these days is artificial intelligence, AI, and AI is at the heart of what your software does. How worried should we be about AI in your software given all of the discussion that's going on in the industry?
In the case of our software, each customer, each user of the software controls their own data, and there's no kind of blurring of boundaries where their data might end up somewhere else. In fact, in the on-premise scenario, many of our Hollywood customers are keeping it what's called air-gapped on their premises. So we have a very big promo house that does all the tentpole movies. They're working with content that won't be seen in the public for 6 months or a year further, but they're very comfortable with using AI because it's on-premise AI that they can control and cost manage. So it goes no further than them, and it becomes their asset instead of their potential competition.
What hardware do I need to run this on?
Typically, you need a workstation class, 1 or 2 computers, It can be as little as like a Mac Studio and an additional machine that would have an NVIDIA card in it. But we do have customers that scale it all the way up to large server farms and so forth. It's really case dependent and more or less proportional to the scale of the use.
There's so much here at NAB and so many different companies represented. What trends are you seeing in the industry?
I think the biggest one is a little bit of that decentralization that's happening not only at the largest media organizations, who increasingly are operating at a production level basis. They're not all centralized. Used to have the NBC 30 Rock and everything happened in the one building. It definitely doesn't work like that anymore. So that decentralization is also creating pools of talent in areas like, just for example, the creator economy. Some of the YouTubers have many petabytes of material, and we know because we're working with some of them, that would put a traditional production to shame. So if you really look at it, take a step back, more and more video is being shot and edited for non-traditional purposes in this distributed way. And as a result, the fraction that is traditional broadcast and movies is shrinking, even though those industries are largely flat. It's just that everything else is growing so much faster that it puts it to shame.
One of the themes here at NAB is just the tumult that the industry is in. There's so much change going on. Where are you seeing your customers come from? Are they traditional broadcasters, or who's buying your product?
That's the interesting thing. Only about 15% of our customers are traditional broadcasters and studios. The other 85% are all the other people who have large amounts of content and don't know what to do with it. People like sports teams, universities, churches, government groups, political campaigns, and corporate video. These are the people who have, in many cases, hundreds of terabytes and sometimes petabytes of content. And those numbers used to just be associated with the biggest broadcasters. But now it's anybody who goes out shooting in 4K and wants to keep it all. Turns out the numbers get pretty big pretty quickly.
If I'm a small group, a small production company, can I use Axle, or does it require really enterprise budgets?
No, actually for the small teams and for the distributed teams, we have something called AxleAI Cloud that still maintains a high degree of privacy for your data, but you're able to access it without making any hardware investment or capital software investment.
Where do you see Axle evolving in the future? Now, I ask this for my own personal benefit because I own Axle, and I want to know what the development structure looks like. So tell me all of your secret plans for the next year and a half.
If I knew what they were, I'd be delighted. One of the things about AI right now is that it is moving so quickly. I've told our developer teams to think of a typical month these days as being like a year in years past. There is so much happening. And so to be able to sort of chart a path with some degree of certainty 18 months out is almost impossible. What you can say is that the advancements are happening so rapidly that our product improves literally from week to week, and that our customers are the beneficiaries of this. I think one of the things you're definitely going to be seeing is more and more kind of 360-degree searchability and observability. You're going to start to see repurposing, targeted repurposing of I'd like to what if this out and do rough cuts. I'd like to be able to hand it off to the editors with a little bit more fluidity in terms of not just raw assets, but kind of pre-edited and maybe even social media ready assets. So that flow from like having many terabytes of material to deciding what to put out on social media that day, we think that path needs to get quicker and more efficient on an ongoing basis.
Sam, how would you summarize what you want people to remember about AxleAI?
Our slogan is that we do radically simple on-premise AI and media management. And I think that's what we'd like people to remember about us.